Under the watchful eye of Auckland Sky Tower, our 25th anniversary trip to New Zealand began. This is Arnold Park, created at the end of the 19th century on the site of an old army barracks. The fountain was imported from Britain. The park is tucked in between Queen Street, Auckland's main drag, and Auckland's University. This is its clock tower. It was a delightful place to hang out while we waited for our accommodation to become available. If the Dark Lord Sauron ever did visit New Zealand, maybe to collect some royalties, you could kind of imagine him living in the Sky Tower. We had our own tower on the 31st floor, and this is the view from it. The Sky Tower has been designed to withstand a magnitude 8 earthquake. I understand the Sky Tower caters for gamblers. The strongest earthquake in the recent history of North Island was 8.1. Being a transmitter, the tower is over 1,000 feet tall. This is the highest natural point in Auckland. This is the crater of Mount Eden. Auckland is built on volcanoes, and this one erupted 28,000 years ago. On the horizon behind the tower is Ringatoto, which last erupted in 1500. Carved out of petrified volcanic ash called tuff is Cathedral Cove on the Cornwall Peninsula of North Island. It's also by far the most beautiful beach I have ever seen. It shows that the Lord of the Rings franchise has not monopolised the New Zealand landscape. This beach is featured in the Prince Caspian episode of the Chronicles of Narnia. Next we were off to visit another volcano, Waiheke Island, which is 14 miles from where we were staying. In the 15 million years since the last eruption, it has become, according to Lonely Planet, one of the best places in the world to visit. The beaches here are almost as good as the Thai chicken curry I had in one of the many excellent restaurants. This is the endemic variable oyster catcher. Variable because sometimes they're mottled. On the way to and from Waiheke Island, you pass the Ringatoto scoria cone. This is made up from material ejected from the volcano when it last erupted 600 years ago. So we returned to the quay in Auckland. Our apartment was towards the top of the Checkerball building to the left, and so only 5 minutes from the quay. Next day we decided to check out the local beaches adjacent to Auckland. This is the perfectly presentable beach in Marshall Bay, a 15-minute bus ride from the centre of Auckland. The trouble was we'd been a bit spoilt for beaches. And so the sun rose on the last day of our 5-day trip to North Island. My only regret is that all the trips to Rotorua were fully booked. This was the scene out of the window as our plane approached Christchurch. I'd like to think that somewhere down there was the New Zealand version of the River Wandle, which is my local river in London. I probably missed it though. My better half likes beaches. I really like Christchurch and extinct volcanoes. The Sumner suburb ticks all 3 boxes. I became rather excited when I discovered Cave Rock. I thought the cave might be a lava tube. In fact, it isn't. it's probably been caused by wave action, although the surrounding basalt was erupted from two enormous volcanoes in the nearby towns of Littleton and Akaroa. They last erupted between 12 and 8 million years ago. After a couple of days we headed south and reached the astonishing beauty of Lake Tekapo.
Hello.
I'm told that the sapphire watercolour is made by dust being scraped off the mountains by glaciers and suspended in the water, which absorbs infrared light, leaving ultraviolet. That cloud was in exactly the same place the last time I visited 5 years ago. Lake Tekapo features the Church of the Good Shepherd, which is apparently one of the most photographed churches in New Zealand. I wonder where the competition is. We returned to Tekapo because of its reputation as a dark sky reserve, but maybe because of the rising full moon, we couldn't see many more stars than in the reserve at Exmoor. Moonrise over the lake though was magical. In some ways the nearby Lake Pukaki is even more serene, guarded by the magisterial Mount Cook at 12,000 feet plus, the highest mountain in New Zealand. These rapids and the hydro station are called Roaring Meg in the Kararu Gorge. If it's potentially fatal, it must be Queenstown. This guy is taking his insurance salesman for a ride. They're now negotiating premia. Life policy agreed. You're right, we are not on any of these boats. Heading south from Queenstown alongside Lake Wakatipu, accompanied by some rather eerie temperature inversion cloud. This place is called Flat Knob. Doesn't seem particularly appropriate in any sense. The rainforests are largely comprised of southern beech trees. The glass-topped coach is driving us through the granite massif of this part of the Southern Alps. The Southern Alps are a relatively young mountain range, mostly uplifted in the last 4 million years. Their growth arises from the Indo-Australian tectonic plate pushing up against the Pacific tectonic plate. They are significantly lower than the European Alps and may never grow to rival them owing to the fierce erosion caused by the winds hurtling in off of the Southern Ocean and the inability of the Earth's crust locally to support more mass. Not all of the Southern Alps are made of granite. The rocks around Queenstown, for example, are made of schist, which is a sedimentary rock that has been metamorphosed by heat and pressure deep within the Earth's crust. The realisation of our quest, Milford Sound, although in fact it's a fjord. A sound is a river valley. Fjords are deeper and steeper glacial excavations. Although it hasn't rained for a few days and the number of waterfalls is diminished, those that are flowing are impressive enough. This crack is part of the Southern Alps Fault. It's a crack in the Earth's crust that stretches all the way from Milford Sound up to the top of South Island. The western side of the crack is moving north and the eastern side is moving south at the not inconsiderable rate of over a foot every decade. So the west coast of New Zealand is moving one way and the rest of New Zealand is moving the other. When the earthquake comes, it's going to be huge. This is the Tasman Sea at the western extremity of Milford Sound, which isn't actually very long from end to end. Plenty of room for these sea lions though. We saw this waterfall from distance earlier. Apparently going underneath it brings you good luck. And I'm sure this has been a legend ever since the first day trippers arrived.
Alright guys, so it's probably not the best time to tell you all this, but I'm actually the bus driver. It's my first time. Hits the bottom of that seafront. All the hot air makes it rise and create quite a lot of lift. So the pilots and Milford are quite close to this, just to give that extra little bit of boost. Hard off to the left hand side pretty shortly, you're going to see a bit of a man-made structure. This is half an underwater observatory. Unfortunately, a few months ago, the other half sunk in a large storm, but you used to be able to go down there below the waterline, 20 or 30 metres, see the lights of the black hole.
Spotted these little martin chicks under the eaves of a gift shop at Te Anau on the way back to Queenstown. We next headed up the Queenstown to Glenorchy Road, and this is the first port of call, Bob's Cove. Bob's a very lucky man, but not as lucky as his neighbour Mr Bennett, whose bluff we call on next. I didn't think this colour existed anywhere apart from paintings of choirs of angels by romantic artists, but it does, and my angel drove me here. Can you see what might be an upland bully? But then again it might not. Middle Earth begins around the north end of Lake Wakatipu. although some people found a red hut in Glenorchy more to their taste. Back in Queenstown we did the cable car up the side of the mountain. Opposite are the schist mountains of the Remarkables, so named because they do stick out a bit. In front of us now is the southern stretch of Lake Wakapitu. Along the southern stretch is the beginning of the 150-mile road to Milford Sound. But in fact the sound is only 20 odd miles away from the northern end of this stretch of the lake, which finishes in Glenorchy. But the mountains get in the way. And so we bid farewell to Queenstown. But not, it so transpired, to the mortal thrills. The blessed Saturn have sent us over the shorter but much higher and slower road to Lake Wanaka, and this is the famous drowned willow tree. One of the reasons we came to Wanaka was to climb towards Roy's Peak, which is the peak that the pine tree is more or less pointing towards. The trail up to the peak is not really that hard, no scrambling. It's steep and there is no shade, so you need plenty of water and plenty of sunscreen. We actually stopped at this point, which was half an hour from the top, the lookout. The furthest point on our trip was Dunedin, which I went to in search of the Dunedin Sound and found it in the Relic Records shop. It also has the steepest street in the world, Baldwin Street. On the way back to Christchurch we stopped off to visit the spherical Meraki boulders. It can take 4 million years for a boulder to form under the seabed. Mudstone is cemented by calcite out from a central nucleus, often formed from a seashell or other organic matter. Our trip ended back in Christchurch. We took refreshment by the lovely Avon or Atakaro River, and endemic longfin eel came to say goodbye. It's appropriate that our 25th wedding anniversary trip should end where it began, among the flowers, this time of the glorious Botanic Gardens in Christchurch.